Hi, we are all dealing with a lot of new information right now with the coronavirus, and everything is changing every day. Sometimes it feels like every minute. We're all getting ready here at Million Dollar Women for the Million Dollar Women Summit in a few weeks. And we just yesterday had to make a big change in how we're going to run the summit. We're going to bring a lot of it online, maybe all of it online. And I know that you at home are also dealing with all these big changes in your business, in your life, kids not going to school, people's children coming home from semesters abroad in Europe. There's so much changing right now, and it's creating a lot of anxiety. So I wanted to share some mindset tips. I'm a trained mindset expert, and there are some real ways of handling anxiety, both for yourself and helping people on your team or in your family, that I wanted to quickly share with you so that you could use them. So I came up with a little acronym called LESS, L-E-S-S. And this is to help lessen the anxiety that people are feeling around you. It's completely normal to be feeling anxious right now. We don't know where the end of the coronavirus is. Is the stock market going to keep tumbling down? How is this going to affect our businesses, our families? There's a lot to be anxious about. However, you learn in mindset training that you always have a choice about how you react. And so I want to help you help people around you have slightly less anxiety around what's happening right now and all the unknowns. So let me teach you this acronym real quick. It's a 4-step process to lessening anxiety. And the first step is listen. So if someone is feeling very anxious around you, maybe they're afraid to come into work, maybe they're talking about their mother-in-law who is immune compromised and they're worried she's going to get the coronavirus. There's so many things people are anxious about right now. Step number 1 is to listen. That is the L of L-E-S-S. And when I say listen, it's a very active kind of listening where you're also validating what they're feeling, even if what they're saying is something completely different than how you see it. Maybe you think they're way over the top worried or they shouldn't be anxious about that. But in really good listening, you just validate their feelings so that they feel heard. So that's saying things like, tell me more. What does that feel like? How is that for you? Things like that, but without passing any judgment or making any recommendations. So that's step 1, the L, is to listen. Step 2 is to empathize. Because when people are feeling anxious, they really want to feel understood. So you can say things like, that sounds really hard. Or it sounds like you've been having a really tough time. Or I'm really sorry that this is creating so much stress for you. How can I help? Things like that. And if you can, maybe share a story about you when you were feeling really anxious about something. My operations manager, Maddie, was feeling anxious about how the whole world has changed so much in so little time, and will it ever get back to normal? And I shared with her that after 9/11, because I'm a little older than she is, there was that same feeling in the air of like, everything's different, and will it ever be normal again? And even though for a few months it was really scary and hard, then everything completely went back to normal. So I was able to empathize with her feeling like everything's upside down and also share a time when I felt that way after 9/11. So that's a really great thing to do, to empathize. The next thing in the 4-step process is to share, because now the person should be feeling a bit better that they're not carrying around all this anxiety anymore. They've shared it with you. They've told you how they're feeling. You've empathized, so they know you've heard them. So the next thing you can do is share some resources. And these are resources to help them shift their frame of mind. One of the first resources that you can share is a mindset best practice, which is to try to focus on something positive. Because whatever you focus on expands. This is something you can teach someone now that they've told you what they're feeling nervous or anxious about. You can say, hey, that's all totally real, and I get why you feel that way, and I empathize. But what you focus on expands. So maybe we can focus on something else so that this can shrink instead of expand, because we don't want the people around us spending all day, every day in this high anxiety state. First of all, it affects everyone around you, and it's not good for your own health or immune system to be in a state of high anxiety. And we all want to get back to work and have life go on as normal as possible during this time. So you can share these resources. One is to tell them what you focus on expands, and to try to help them focus on something positive. Like, what are you looking forward to? Or what's good in your life right now? and get people focused on what they have to be grateful for. If they already have a gratitude practice, then it's a good time to remind them to do it. So some people like to write down every night before they go to bed, 5 things they're grateful for. Or some people at the dinner table will say, hey, before we start eating, let's each say 3 things that we're grateful for right now. That's called a gratitude practice. It's just being very intentional about recognizing the good things in your life. And all studies have shown that the more you practice gratitude, the more anxiety diminishes, because it really does distract your brain from the anxious feelings. And it reminds you there's a lot to be grateful for, even in the midst of a difficult time. So those are a couple of resources you can share. What you focus on expands, up your gratitude practice, and anything else that you've used yourself that you've found helpful in a difficult time to get back into a good state. One of my favorite ones is the what could go right exercise. Whenever I'm feeling anxious, I like to just get out a piece of paper or my journal and I write at the top of it, what could go right? And then I'll just list 10 things that could go right. Because our brain is very good at going to the negative. We have about 50,000 thoughts a day. It's a lot of thoughts. Have you ever heard what percentage of those thoughts are negative? What if you had to guess? What percentage of your 50,000 thoughts a day do you think are negative? 60%, 90%, 30%? Well, it's 70%. That's a pretty high number. So our brain is very good at going to the negative. When you get mindset training, part of it is teaching yourself to catch your brain in that moment and redirect those thoughts to something positive. If you take yoga, you know that they sometimes will say to you when you're meditating, if the thoughts come to you, acknowledge them and set them aside while you're meditating. They'll often say that. Acknowledge the thoughts and set them aside. This is that same kind of practice. All right, so now you've shared some resources so that they know that there's another way of getting through this tough time, right? They can do gratitudes, they can do the what could go right exercise, focus on something positive. And so the last step is to shift them to doing something different. And this is really a full-on redirect. If you have small children, you know what this looks like. If they're reaching for the jar of Twizzlers, right, you redirect them to the organic blueberries. We get very good at this as moms. But you can also do it when people are in an anxious state. You say, hey, how about we play some music? How about we go out for lunch? How about we call cousin Barbara and see how she's doing? Just changing what you're physically doing will have a huge impact on your state. So once you've helped this person through this 3 steps of the 4-step process, the L, the listen, the E, the empathize, the S, the sharing the resources, now you're ready to shift them into a new mode. And if you can, initiate that, right? Say, hey, why don't we go take a walk? Or why don't we go out for lunch today? And I know you're thinking, but it's the coronavirus. We're not supposed to go anywhere. I just had lunch out. It went great. If we don't keep going to businesses and keep doing some of the things that we usually do, we're going to cause a full-on recession. And that is going to be worse than the coronavirus. So, let's take precautions, but let's also keep running our lives and moving forward and not get too caught up in all the hysteria and hype. So I hope that you'll be able to use this 4-step process for someone who's having a tough time. And if you're a business owner watching, we are leaders. We lead our teams. We're often leaders in our communities, serving on boards, helping other entrepreneurs get ahead. So I'd love you to ask the question of yourself today, how can I help other people who are having a tough time with this to get through this time in an easier and less painful way? I hope these tips have been helpful. I will be thinking about you and sending you good energy wherever you are. And stay brave. Thanks. Bye-bye.